All right, let's kick things off. So, folks, welcome to our Federal BizApps webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sonny Eltsbu. I'm a BizApps technical specialist here at Microsoft, and we appreciate your attendance. Basically, my team's been hosting these webinars for about a year, a little more than a year. So, any repeat attendees, glad you found your value enough to come back on, and I hope today's will still deliver the same or even more value than you've gotten before on these calls. Session we've lined up today is awesome. We've got some serious talent on call. We'll be discussing how you can use AI for the Power Platform within the federal government. And this has been a really hot topic, and nearly every single one of our customers has been talking about this, if not all, honestly. I've gotten so many questions around this. I said, let's do a webinar on it. So I've with me Milton and Phil Topness. These two are Power Platform legends. And I'm really glad they were generous enough to get on call and deliver this presentation. So thank you guys for joining. And before I hand it off to Dave and Phil, some logistics for this session. So we've got intros for 5 minutes, and then presentation for about 40, and then lastly about 15 minutes for Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A window to your right. My wonderful colleague, Tara Clark, is actually monitoring that, and she's offered to help out. So thank you, Tara. And we'll be recording this session, and it will be posted on our federal GitHub for business applications. And Tara, if you could post that in the chat as well. It's got a ton of info for federal business applications on there. And we'll be recording this session, but the Q&A at the end will not be recorded, so you can comfortably ask, your questions at the end directly to Phil and Dave. Please note, this is a Microsoft digital event, and we want to create a safe and inclusive space where everyone can share and learn from one another. We do reserve the right to remove anyone if we feel that things are becoming disruptive in any way. So please do keep that in mind when you guys are engaging and interacting with each other. And now that the boring stuff is out of the way, I'm going to pass the baton to Dave and Phil to introduce themselves and kick off the presentation. Dave and Phil, take it away, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. Nice to see everybody. My name is Dave. I lead the Power Platform Global Black Belt team at Microsoft, which is a really long way of saying I get to wake up in the morning and talk about low code with our largest and most strategic customers, including all of you in federal government. And Phil is just learning how to use the mute button. Please be patient with him.
Well, I thought the line through it meant that it was on. Okay, thanks, Dave. So my name's Phil Topness. Like Dave, I deal with technology, although it's not obvious right now. Working with the top customers, more from the engineering side. So I'm part of the Power Platform engineering team and a team called PowerCat, the customer advisory team. And so let's get started. We are in the era of co-pilots. In Power Platform, we have launched over 50 co-pilot features just in the last few months. An AI builder has done 7 billion with a B predictions. And we are not slowing down. Go hit the next one, Dave. We're not slowing down. It's been quite a journey. And if you think about it, Sonny mentioned this event happened last year. Now, last year at this event, if whoever was speaking would have mentioned Copilot, most of us probably would have had the same picture in our minds. But now AI is infused everywhere, and that's what we want to show you today. In fact, in the platform team, Power Platform team, we have reorganized to put a more strategic, cross-cutting focus on it. And one of the outcomes of that has been better U.S. government readiness. And so finally, we're going to be able to talk about some of the stuff that is coming to the government or already there that you can utilize today to bring AI to your organizations. I'll turn it over to Dave.
Awesome. So yeah, let's jump in. And I think, a lot of times when we talk about co-pilots, AI, Power Platform, one of the key elements of this is just like, well, who are we talking about? Because there's a huge audience that we address specifically with Power Platform. And, in a lot of ways, sometimes we kind of look at maybe the polar opposite ends of the technology talent spectrum where, clearly we've got maybe pro developers who are used to using Azure services and, pro code And on the other end, we've got kind of your everyday end users who are used to using collaboration tools and maybe Teams, SharePoint, Office, those types of things. But we're really here to help bridge a gap and create not just a binary on-off solution, but really introduce a spectrum of capabilities that everybody can participate in for low code, no code. And that extends into our AI capabilities. So clearly, as we launch Copilot capabilities, I think in a lot of ways we're focusing on what maybe that's going to have an impact on for everyday end users who, otherwise might not be confident enough to participate in a low-code world. But also for pro developers, we want to speed up everything that you're doing and make it easier to do the everyday tasks in building world-class end-to-end enterprise solutions. So I'm going to start today talking about some of the AI capabilities that exist today in our government clouds that you can take advantage of right away, regardless of where you sit on the spectrum. And Phil mentioned AI Builder and the 7 billion predictions that it's done. It does a lot more than predictions, though. And I don't know what the number would be if we included all of the different capabilities across the different categories that AI Builder addresses. But really, in a nutshell, if you're not familiar, AI Builder takes our Azure Cognitive Services, all these AI services that have existed, across our hyperscale, planet scale cloud, and bring them into the low-code world so that you can either embed them in your existing Power Platform solutions or even surround existing workflows and processes and augment existing applications with intelligence. So it's available today if you're using GCC or GCC High. We do have it in the near roadmap on the DoD cloud as well. So if you're there, certainly pay attention through this next section. We're going to show you some common ways to get very, very fast time to value by infusing AI into your existing processing. One of the most common ways that we see this done is through document processing. And we joke around that platforms are really here to help solve an infinite number of problems. And I feel like forms and documents are infinite, and that's across every industry. I try to make a government joke here, but really, whether I'm working with financial services or manufacturing or federal and defense, documents are everywhere. And so what we can do with AI Builder is, a couple of different things. One is simply recognize text right off of an image or a document. So this is your basic OCR extraction. This can be helpful if we don't necessarily know what format we're dealing with and we simply want to work with the text. But then we have other models that are pre-built. So we see things like invoices or receipts all the time. And there's no reason for you as a customer to have to train a model, even in a low-code world, to do those sorts of things. So you can use those out-of-the-box pre-trained models to go and extract data right away from invoices and receipts, even identity documents. And then we also have a custom capability where you can build your own form processing model. So when you have forms structured or unstructured that you'd like to work with, it's very simple to get started with AI Builder. And in fact, that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to take a real world form. In this case, it's a CN23. This is a customs declaration form where if you've ordered something online and it comes from overseas, it's going to have one of these slapped to the box. And it's going to have the sender information, the recipient, and then some line items in the middle for what's contained in this package and a couple of other items here. In the next 5 minutes, we're going to build a cloud-native AI model with AI Builder that can extract data off of this form. And then 2 minutes after that, we're going to embed it into an application that we can use on a mobile device or on a web browser. So this all starts inside a Power Platform with AI Builder, where I'm going in, I'm telling it I have structured documents to work with, and I'm just going to iterate through what are the fields that I want to extract. This part is no code. Sometimes we talk about low code. This part is truly no code. I am just describing the fields, and in this case, the columns of the table that I want to extract off of this form. So anybody can do this if you have a basic understanding and let's just say you can read. Beyond that, though, what I'm going to do is build collections. Now, I might have variations of this document. So the UK might have one format and Switzerland might have another, or name your different variants. But in this case, we're going to build one version of this form. And it's as dead simple as just dragging on top of where the data exists and mapping it to the fields that I defined earlier. And even for the table, this is really just an exercise is defining where the rows and the columns exist in this document. And then as I go through each column, I can map them to the column headers that we defined before. So again, really, this part is no code. And within minutes, I do this for the 5 different examples that I had. By the way, you should do more. This is the bare minimum, but that's how I roll. You can see the data already being extracted as we build this model. We've got our 5 examples ready, baked, and now I can simply train this model. Didn't have to deploy any infrastructure, didn't have to have a degree in data science. I'm already training a model right now that's going to read the CN23 form. Now, once we've trained it, you do have the opportunity to go through and test it. And so we can give it a 6th example just to make sure things are working well. You'll see I've got an accuracy score. That's going to degrade over time as you get different variants in here, but we've got native capabilities for a feedback loop so you can continue to improve the performance of your models. But I'm getting pretty good results right off the bat. So I'm ready to start using this. And right away, I've got an easy button to say, hey, do I want to use this in an app, in a flow, or maybe I want to use it in our document automation solution. I'm going to go build my own app, which launches me straight into Power Apps. I've got a form processor control. When I'm working in a browser, it asks me to upload a file. When I work on a device in a moment, it'll use my camera. But it understands the schema that we defined in the earlier step. So if I want to start displaying this data, and I just chose a couple of quick fields here, all I had to do was choose the fields from the predefined list that were a part of that AI builder model. So even if I wasn't the person to have built this AI builder model, I could certainly consume it without really having to know much about it. Now, I wouldn't deploy this app. It's not going to win any awards for user experience. And so, obviously you're going to use your Power App skills to go through and really refine the user interface, which is exactly what we did. And so given, a day or two later, we've been able to make the user interface look a lot like that paper form. So the people that are a part of this process still feel at home. When you go to add a document, you can see I'm on an iPhone. It launches the camera. And so I can just take a picture of this document if it was taped to a box or a package. The AI builder's going to run the model in the background, give us the data back, and then we can go even further. Because like in this example, I might have extracted some data off of that document, but now I want to go further. I'm on a mobile device. Maybe I need to take pictures of the items that are a part of this package. And like in this case, the item might have a label on it that's written in another language. So we can use AI builders built-in models for text detection or language detection, so I can tell what language it is, and then go through and even do the translation. So now somebody doing an inspection or working with this item can quickly get all of that text translated. And it's easy to plug in more and more models. They're all built effectively the same way. And so I can use them in my apps and workflows. Like in this case, I'm still going to use the camera. I'm going to take a picture of an item and use our object description feature here to tell me that I've got my dirty coffee cup on my desk. So everyone knows that about me now. And it can even count items. And so if we're looking at, in this case, it was a food and drug example here. We want to be able to take a picture of the items, do a count, and even try to detect what type of item it was based on a model that we had trained in AI Builder as well. So it can go really far. And then, of course, you can add the finishing touches. Like maybe I want to have a signature. I'm on a touch screen. I can add analytics through Power BI here. And so we can really build like a 3-dimensional solution using AI to help augment what people are doing every single day. Other than, which is what a customer would have had to do otherwise, is type everything in, or even on a phone. Imagine having to thumb all of that in, on a mobile keyboard. So this is changing the way that we can capture information and work with it. And this can happen in the background as well. So instead of an app experience, think about embedding this into a workflow where invoices or receipts are coming in and we want to process those documents automatically. Power Automate's going to help us do that. But this isn't just about demos, and it's not just about an idea. We've seen this actually implemented in the real world. We had a customer with a public assistance program around food security. So school lunch programs, SNAP and WIC programs were traditionally done via sending paper in and having these papers move around the organization in order to approve access to these programs. We see is like Power Apps being used at USDA and the Food and Nutrition Service to help not only just organize where this data is going through what would otherwise say be a traditional Power App, but they're using AI in order to help process the intake. And it's a little bit hard to see up here, but you can get their sample data. You're getting about a 70% automatic routing because they built an AI builder document understanding model here, where they can go in and for all of these applications for benefits, they can actually extract the key information off of these documents and use that information to automatically route. So you can see in this app here, it was extracting things like the region, the state, the type, and they're using that in order to determine where this needs to go. So cutting a process down from weeks down to minutes, or in some cases seconds, depending on how good the scans or the document quality is. And rather than having this be a black box, they actually get transparency. All of these models will give you the metadata you need to understand what decisions were made. So in this case here, what we can see is the office was only 16% confidence. That's what caused it to route to a human through the Power App to have them go and make the correction, detect the anomaly, fix it, and move on. And rather than building a discrete model for every single type of application they have, what this customer did was really just do a mapping between the scan terms that they have, the states, and the downstream offices where they needed to route. So as new forms are introduced into this model, they can simply just do the mapping of terms to states to offices and have it continue to automatically route. And on top of all that, leverage Power BI so that you can get analytics out the back end of it. And so what we really end up having is a three-dimensional solution where a problem like this couldn't really be addressed with just an application alone or really just automation. You need the combination of apps, automation, analytics, and AI in this case in order to build a full solution to this problem to help across all dimensions. And with that, I'll toss it over to Phil.
Thanks, Dave. I love that example from the USDA. And so when you see examples like that, and really when Dave, Sunny, and I are at an event, one of our customers will be up on stage with an example like the one you just saw. And without fail, we'll hear whispered into our ear the same question. And that question is always, how do I copy that? How do I do that, right? And we want you to match that. So we should share the template. And the secret is there really isn't one template to achieving that kind of thing that USDA has done. And I don't know how I was invited here to be the doom and gloom, but I do want to be honest about this transition into AI and low code. You are here at this event because you're on the cutting edge of AI and low code. There are people back at your office now who will hear your plan and decide they like the way the world is today. AI is a threat. Some will try to actively undermine your vision. Now, I will admit, when encountering these people, I have caught myself thinking, we don't need them on the journey, right? Or they just need to get it, right? I talked with the vice president at a large organization whose name you'd recognize. I'm not going to share. And I said, you have a vision for low code and AI at your organization. How do you make sure your team comes along? And they said, I've made the decision. They just need to get it. Right? That's not an inspiring change vision. So let's talk about those people who aren't here at this event, right? That are back at the office. What is the root of their anxiety? And I bet you've heard this question. Is AI coming for my job? Will I be replaced by a robot? Or more specifically, right? These are real quotes. I was heartbroken when I lost my job. It was so nice there, right? 500,000 people will lose their job due to this new technology. What happened here? What was the outcome? So this first one is a real quote from a study done by the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. It's from a telephone operator. Up to the 1950s, humans, mostly young women, would connect phone calls. You would say who you wanted to talk to, and they would patch a cable between two parties, right? You wouldn't dial a number. You would actually communicate with this human in the middle until automation came for those jobs. 2% of the people in the workforce were automated out of a job. The rumor is that someone from Kansas City, Missouri developed the first automated telephone switching because he was an undertaker. He owned a funeral home and he was hoping to divert the calls of grieving families from his competitor to himself. But more importantly, what happened to the group of people replaced by technology? In multiple studies, when looking at this cohort of mostly young women employed in this industry, they ended up in better, more satisfying work. From one of the people that studied it, right? The idea that the demand for young women in the workforce surged in these industries enough to offset these jobs lost to automation is almost magical. What about the 500,000 people that lost their jobs to new technology? This is real. This really happened. Around 1906, the term spreadsheet and beyond was a large ledger of paper, sometimes the size of a table, columns for categories and expenditures across the top, invoices down the left margin, each payment in a cell where the row and column intersect. They were usually spread across multiple pages. Managing this and erasing and recalculating was a real job, a job I had as a teenager, right? That's how legend I am, Sonny. And then came the spreadsheet, right? The original low-code platform. And forget about ledgers for a second. Who would have guessed that this would be running most of global industry? But after the introduction of Excel in 1987, 500,000 accounting and auditing clerks lost their jobs. 25% of the people doing that role. Where did they go? Those 500,000 people became accountants and auditors and management analysts. And not just 500,000, but the number of Americans employed in those roles doubled, rose to 1 million over the next decade. So we have been here before. Repeatedly, history has shown that technology isn't here to put us on the street. And it's those that are most prepared that end up in the more satisfying careers. So the risk of being bold and early and wrong is much less than being conservative late and wrong. So that's the real reason to embrace AI, right? Is no one should have to work alone. And society needs your best work. But are there risks? As far as the risk, if you ask Gartner and others, the risk is something different. You've heard of shadow IT, right? Those access databases and Excel spreadsheets that run the organization without IT's knowledge. Meet shadow AI. 49% of people have used generative AI over the last year, with a third using it daily, and that number is increasing. For IT, this is a governance nightmare. Do you turn off AI? What impact to the business? Or do you even have that option when your IT leadership is asking for AI use cases urgently? So not having control and visibility over this leads us to security and privacy risk, right? That's shadow AI. And so that's why here, and what you're seeing today, our focus has been on an integrated approach with governance, controls, all integrated into the entire platform, giving you transparency. So that's what we wanted to show today. I'll turn it back over to Dave to talk a little more about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. And yeah, I mean, what we're going to show and talk about is really co-pilots, and not the one that Phil showed that's inflatable. Ours are decidedly non-inflatable, but they are collaborators. They are really, well, the key is they're not autopilot. They are here to assist and uplift what we're doing. Because in many ways, again, this is applicable to whoever you are. If you have a computer science degree and you have a job for developing solutions, or you work in a line of business, really what we're seeing is the best programming language we have is natural language. And what co-pilots and AI are really bringing to the world right now is they are, overall shortening the gap between, instructions for computers and the things that we need to do. The good news is we've actually been investing in this for a long time. So we've seen AI Builder, and I wanted to at least share, one other area where you may not have noticed AI before in the Power Platform, and this is surfaced in something we call Power Apps Ideas. And for folks on the call here who maybe aren't familiar with building Power Apps, there are ways to add expressions and logic into your apps to describe the behavior, or to have something disappear, reappear, change the look or feel of it. And we use an expression language called PowerFX, which it is based on what we do in Excel with formulas, but it may not be something that everyone understands right out of the box. And I'll show you an example of how we've been using AI in Power Apps for years now to help people develop faster. And so in this example here, I've got a quick Power App that's showing kudos for team members. In fact, these are my team members, and I love to see their names and faces on here. In this case, what we're doing is we're going to go and take this gallery of data, and I want to sort it based on the created on date. And on the right side, I'm typing pretty quickly here, but I can just give it that instruction in natural language and have Power Apps recommend the formula that I need, the expression in PowerFX here, sort kudos created on ascending. So I don't have to go and look that up myself. And like in this case here, I may want to get even more complex here. And so I can continue to change this prompt get more ideas, and have Power Apps give me the syntax that I need in order to make these changes. So, even as somebody who builds a lot of Power Apps all day long, it's much more convenient to use this feature than to go dive through the reference articles to go and find the definitions and the syntax I need. And imagine if you were somebody building your first Power App, to be able to come up with an expression like this: sort, filter, kudos, created on, date, add. I mean, there's 3 or 4 different things in here that would easily trip you up if you haven't done it before. So the good news is we have been investing in this, and this capability entered Power Apps, I believe, 2021. So we've had a couple of years to start perfecting this, and this is really the reason why, once Microsoft made the investment in OpenAI, that we were able to capitalize so quickly on this. And what you've probably seen in our commercial clouds, which I'll give you a sneak preview of here in a couple of minutes, we've been able to roll this out across the entire platform so quickly. But I do want to take a moment and talk about also kind of the differences between, in a lot of cases, what we talk about as generative AI, which we as Microsoft have embedded in our Copilot features. So we've done all the heavy lifting and put it into our products. And the capabilities that everybody also has today to include generative AI in your own solutions. A key part of this offer is that we have what we call Azure OpenAI. We've taken the OpenAI services that everyone has probably used through ChatGPT, and we've incorporated it into Azure. And we've gotten that service through the FedRAMP High authorization process. So in Azure Commercial, we have this authorization, or Azure Public, to use the Azure OpenAI services. These are the services that we also use when we build Copilot features into Power Platform. And customers have access to these today through Azure to use and build in their own solutions. The real value here is that you're inheriting all of our responsible AI principles, capabilities, and protections that we have built into this platform. So your data is protected. We're not sharing your prompts or your data with any other tenants or customers on the platform. It is not used to train the foundation models. We simply don't even need the data. And your data is your data. And so we have this connectivity, and we have a long history of customers using the Power Platform in this low-code layer on top of Azure services, which are generally exposed through APIs. In a lot of cases, we have true connectors for them. And so there's capabilities today where you can use the APIs exposed by Azure OpenAI, and you can talk directly to those services from the Power Platform today, or even build your own services. We've got a great Community Hub article that lays out an example of this in use together. It's great to check that out. But one of the key questions we've also gotten from customers is, when are we going to see this all land in the Power Platform in GCC? And it's important to understand that our GCC capabilities, we deliver those by building them with Azure, but we use Azure Government. And so the critical milestone that we needed to see was the Azure OpenAI services to be available in Azure Government as a foundational step for us to then build them into our Copilots for Power Platform GCC, GCC High, and beyond. If you hadn't seen it, hot off the presses, on Halloween, Candice Ling made an announcement on our public blog. We can post the link here in the chat in a minute. And the real key point here is down at the bottom, the Azure OpenAI service and Azure Government. So we are aiming for the first quarter of calendar year 2024 to launch the preview. And again, that is the stepping stone for us to be able to then offer native Copilot features throughout the platform, Power Platform, for all GCC, GCC High customers. And so what I thought I'd do is, while we still have a quarter and some change to get through, I thought I might take a few minutes and do a sneak preview of what's upcoming, because there are a lot of Copilots that we talk about. And if you haven't seen what's available and what's coming up, I thought I'd take a few minutes here today to show you them. So I'm going to start, and we're going to do this live. I'm going to show you what we can use in commercial in terms of Power Apps Copilot. You'll notice, like, when I come to the home screen, it probably looks a little bit different than what you're used to in GCC. I've got this nice "let's build an app, what should it do" prompt. But we've got other ways to build apps as well that can also use AI and Copilot. One of them is starting with data, and I can simply upload an Excel file The Azure OpenAI services on the back end will help determine, the data types and the intent of the data in that file and help generate a table for me. Or I can simply use the prompt right here, and I can say make an app to track employee travel requests. And again, on the back end, we are leveraging Azure OpenAI services. So, your data is staying private. It generates a table for me in Dataverse. And so I've got an initial set of columns here. It also generated sample data, which as a developer, that's super nice. That's not something I enjoy doing. And you can continue to make changes to this schema here. So I might say add a column for purpose. And you can change the data type. So what it'll do is it'll try to interpret my intent for purpose. It added a column here, but it's a text column. And I might want that to be a choice. So make purpose a choice. And it'll go ahead and make that change for me. Now, I'm perfectly capable of going into Power Apps and building this table myself and going in, of course, live demo, it's not going to not going to like the words, but I can even tell it to, make more sample data. And I can save a ton of time doing it this way. Now, I'm still going to get full access to make whatever changes I like through the traditional means in Power Platform. I'm not locked into this experience for the rest of the way. And then I can go and create an app with this. And, again, I build lots of Power Apps all year long, perfectly capable of building an app myself. But what's going to come out the other end of this Copilot is not just like baby's first Power App. It's actually going to be a responsive application by default. So I'll have a nice navigation to be able to go through the sets of records we have. I'll have a form where I can make all my updates and changes, add new records. But if I'm viewing it on a tablet or a phone, it's going to automatically change that user interface. And I don't have to do all of the work of putting all of those containers in place, adjusting all of the formulas, and making sure that everything adjusts properly. So like if I hit play right here, I've got a nice app right out of the gate, moments later, working on top of Dataverse with the table that I defined. And if I change the device here, let's say I want to look at it on an iPhone, automatically changes the layout to be responsive. It saves me immediately at least a half hour's worth, if not an hour of time. Now, on top of all this, we can add additional capabilities. And I can always go in and full control to the Power Apps editor to go in and add additional screens, functionality, anything else I need. But I also have a persistent Copilot here. So like we saw before with Power Apps Ideas, certainly still a part of the experience, but I don't even need to go that far. I can simply ask it to, add an email screen or add a button. More and more you'll be able to interact with, even larger and more complex controls using this interactive Copilot here. And again, just save me time and implement best practices. And we also have a Copilot control that you can add into your experiences as well. Now, there are some settings on the back end that are going to make your data searchable so that you can use it with this Copilot. And I won't have time to go through all those settings here, but it is on the front end as simple as wiring up this Copilot to the data source, in this case that we defined earlier. And now my end users can have a chat-based experience as well and simply ask questions about those employee travel requests. And it's the fastest time to value to go from business data into an AI chat-based experience. And this Copilot can then be customized using Power Virtual Agents if that's what I want to do. So that's what's coming on Power Apps. Of course, we've got Copilots all over the place. I don't want to leave Power Automate out of the mix. We've got a very similar experience here where I can go in and simply describe the flow that I want to build. And like in this case here, I'm going to give it something simple to go and do. I'm going to say, when my boss sends me an email, check if today is Saturday, and if it is, delete the email. And based off of that prompt, Power Automate will go through and give me, in this case, a template so I can see generally what it's going to do in terms of an outline. Looks pretty good. I'll hit next. It's going to wire up my connections. And just based off of that prompt, again, someone like me who's able to build this flow on my own still saves me at least 20 minutes of clicking around here to wire everything up. And in fact, in some cases, like here, we'll see in these conditions, I did the simple stuff, right? Like, okay, if the manager, email matches the sender of the email, okay, easy enough. But this condition, checking to see if it was Sunday, it's using day of week UTC now equal to 6. That's something I probably would have had to look up in order to get right. And the Copilot does that for me right out of the gate. But the Copilot's still here, so we can continue to make changes. Again, save me even more time, so I can go through and ask it, instead of checking if today is Saturday, check if it's Saturday or Sunday, and it can go in and make the changes, and it's going to do so transparently. So in the chat history here, I can see exactly what it did here. It updated it to condition 2. I can see it checked if it was 6 or 7. If I didn't like what it did, I can go ahead and undo it and revert it. Maybe Sunday's fine, but Saturday's not. I'm not going to save this flow or publish it just in case. But the idea is that I can continue to make these changes, and the Copilot's here all along to assist me, or I have full control to make those changes myself. Can even ask it what this flow is doing. So if you've ever had to inherit a workflow or an app from somebody, describe what this flow is doing. And it can go backwards and tell me exactly what's happening here. So, these are experiences that I could certainly just execute through the Copilot. We're also embedding like these AI descriptions of apps, for instance, directly into the native experience. So as users are building apps and flows, we're not doing this, after the fact or having to do it here after I've inherited it. We're going to use Copilots not just to help you make, but also to administer and overall follow best practices. So those were just a couple of quick teasers of what's coming. We didn't have time to get into the AI Builder OpenAI models, what we're doing with Power Pages, certainly not Power BI either. And Power Virtual Agents has a ton of great generative AI features coming as well. But wanted to give you that preview so that when we have our Azure OpenAI services in government, you're ready to experience them firsthand.
So that was a good flavor of what's coming soon in Copilot. I think one of the things that like seeing Dave build that app and that flow in what, 90 seconds, maybe less, it kind of highlights like what has made software expensive and hard really wasn't the software part this whole time. It's getting the experience out of the head of a financial person or an operations manager and putting it in the head of a developer and hoping the right thing comes out the other side. So like Dave said, right, we see the best possible programming language is natural language, right? Flipping that around entirely so that you here today can say, our people already have the expertise. I'm going to give them the tools to have a seat at the table and make their jobs better and to help the people around them work more effectively and accomplish more than they could before, right? That's why this is such an exciting moment in technology. A lot of people in the past, you'd hear this question, right? Are you technical? How technical are you? I don't even know how you answer that, right? 7, right? What's nice about this moment is that question doesn't matter as much anymore. The real question is, what are you going to build? Or for this group of leaders here at this session, what problems will your team solve today? Because you are the ones that will unlock the skills and talents and motivation of thousands of people. Now, again, your coworkers aren't here today, and for many of them, this future is frightening. You are leading them not to the mountain you are standing on, but to that one way off in the distance. And it's not a point-to-point journey. In a way, you are the narrator for your organization's low-code and AI story, right? Your words matter. You're helping your organization interpret the events that happen along the way. There was a study of over 400 leaders and their teams, and they looked at the gap between the self-assessment of the leader and what their teams thought. Of all of the attributes you see on the screen, there were 2 that had the largest gap between what the leaders thought of their own capability and what their teams observed. Vision and empowering. These leaders thought they were good at this, and their teams were like, yeah, boss, not so much. Right? This doesn't just feel hard. This is hard. Now, when it comes to talking about vision, this picture is actually my daughter, Emily. Like a lot of us, I get home, I like to talk about my job, AI, Power Platform. My family gets to endure this endlessly. So as you might imagine, these topics come up a lot around the dinner table. Emily got her first job, an internship at a consulting company. And with that, she gets the tools that we all use every day, right? Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint. And one day at the dinner table, Emily says, Dad, have you ever heard of Microsoft Automate? So I asked Emily the question that most of you are probably thinking right now, right? Emily, do you mean Power Automate? She's like, yes. I'm like, Yeah, Emily, I've heard of Power Automate, right? No matter how many times you share this vision with your organization, they don't understand it as well as you hope they do. So take what you've learned here today and persist and bring those coworkers on this journey. And so that's why we wanted to close by acknowledging that your role is a challenging one. It's about more than just the technology, right? As a technology leader, you have to stay on this ever-changing technology. And some of the stuff you've heard about is really cutting edge. But then as a change leader, you almost have to take a step back and understand the perspective of those around you. So we are all here, not just the Microsoft people that you see on the call, but this community, this group, to ensure that you have the best technology, you've got the right skills, and we're going to be on this journey with you every step of the way. Thanks for coming here today.